Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of The Practice, a very special episode 100. This show is a recorded look into my workflow in Cinema 4D. And I'm Stuart, 3D artist, illustrator, animator, and your pal, and I'm excited to have you back again this week. As you could probably tell by the recording so far, I'm planning to do a huge compilation video that includes all these crazy fantasy characters I've been working on for the past, like 12 or 15 weeks here. I've been sort of on a roll with these types of characters, and I've been having a ton of fun putting them together and riffing sort of on this same theme. So I thought, what better way to celebrate episode 100 than to compile them all together into this mega rendering. I do have to say that I'll probably start doing a different subject matter after this video goes out. I could say, I'm a little bit sick of doing these types of characters. It's definitely been a lot of fun to sort of stick with a theme for an extended period of time. I don't typically do that with the practice. A lot of the times I'm jumping around or just working on sort of whatever I feel like that given day. But I think it's been a useful exercise to continue really practicing how it is that I put these characters together. I think I learned a lot about character modeling and different ways to achieve different things and built really a cool little library of characters here. So I thought it'd be nice to get them all in one scene. So I looks like here I'm just sort of finishing up the process of copying and pasting them all into a consistent, a single consistent file here. And so I'm adding some typography. I really wanted to have like these characters situated around the numbers 100, and we'll continue developing that as the time goes on here. The challenge I think with this particular episode was arranging these characters in a way that worked well. A little bit of a tricky composition. We're dealing with a lot of elements here, and the last several, more than several, the last 10 or 15 weeks or so have all been these single character scenes, and it wasn't there wasn't like a whole composition really to worry about like there is with much of my work, but rather it was these simple single little characters all by themselves in a scene. So this is a sort of a refreshing change of pace, to be honest, to deal with sort of a composition at large and not so much deal with modeling. See here what I'm going to do, and I spent a bit of time for the remainder of the episode really like scaling these guys up and down and figuring out how they all should look. When they're all alone on a page, scale really isn't as important. But when they're all together, you can learn a lot about a character by the size they are, right? So this yellow guy with the green overalls off to the right here, really I wanted him to be like a giant, like a huge giant. And of course, the mouse is one of the smaller characters, so it's cool to sort of see them together and compare the scale of the two. The other thing that I have to do is go through and make the materials a little bit more consistent. They're going to read differently when they're all in the same file because the lighting was slightly different and the colors were slightly different. So you see I spent some time in this episode, unifying some of the materials. And so while I'm arranging these, I guess one thing we could discuss is, the range of looks and character traits that I was able to explore while working on this series, which was really fun. I think there's something about working on a series that allows you to explore themes a little more in depth. Trying to create characters that were similar and felt like a consistent set or like a family almost, but having enough variation within that consistent set that keeps it interesting and makes each character unique unto itself. I have to say that frog that I'm moving right now is definitely one of my favorites of the group. Of course, when you're dealing with a series in a theme, some are going to be stronger than the others. I think some of these were not quite as good as others, and that's just sort of the nature of putting a whole group of characters together like this. So the frog one, which was actually episode 99 from last week, I think was one of the strongest, maybe maybe that's just an effect of practicing and doing so many of them in a row that one of the later ones came out really good. I was also happy with how the owl came out, who's sitting on top of that zero at this point. Wound up moving that owl a little later in the episode, but she's sitting up there for now. I also really liked the cave. I called him the cave explorer. It's the guy in the green cloak with the torch there. I think the lighting on that piece came out really neat. And this is also fun to do characters and not worry about, rigging them or animating them. I know frequently I'll do animations on the practice, but with this episode, or with these series of episodes, it was nice to really just focus on a single image, just a one-shot view of the character. And as you probably noticed, if you kept up with the episodes as I was putting them out, that I just sort of modeled them into a specific pose. Like I didn't worry about doing a T pose and then bringing them into Mixamo or rigging them myself. I just kind of modeled the base and then, in a very simple way, modeled the various poses that they wound up in. It was also cool to illustrate different textures and materiality within this group. Some of the characters have kind of shiny armor, others have kind of dingy old cloaks, things like that. So there really is a bit of a variety there, which was fun. So there's a good example of posing really in a very rudimentary way, just kind of nesting the objects into each other in the hierarchy and the object manager, and just posing in a very, very straightforward kind of way, not worrying about how we would animate this in a potential like animation, like a video or anything like that, even like a short form looping GIF. We just really modeled them into a position that looked nice in a static illustration. So now the one crazy thing about this scene, and you can see it in this view here, it is very, very high in polygons. So I actually have a moment or two throughout this episode while I was recording it that I thought the computer was going to crash. Fortunately, that did not happen, although we did get that volleyball of death a couple times, the beach ball of death. But we were able to avoid any crashes, which was great. Definitely, if I was modeling this scene from the get-go and not each character individually, I would have taken a much lower polygon approach. But this seems to work. The other great thing about pre-recording these is that some of these renderings wind up taking a really long time. And so what I did was fast forward through those for you guys. So you'll see the final rendering we knock out, or one of the final renderings, I should say, because we do wind up doing kind of a series of them here. And since there were so many characters, I figured we could get a couple different camera angles in there and really make the most of it. But I did a 4K rendering at the end here. And I think that the rendering itself wound up taking over an hour. I used a lot of subsurface scattering and, like I mentioned, really high polygon models in these. I think they're a little bit over-engineered for the current scene. So it's a little bit slow, but that's all right. I think one of the things that helped this composition was having the big guys on the outer edges. They sort of frame the composition a bit. He was another one of my favorites, the guy off to the far left with the tiny head and the huge upper body. Love playing with really dramatic proportions like that. Super fun. It's also really fun doing the range of weapons. It's cool to model swords, shields, things like that. And what's great now is I've got this kind of library of assets to pull from in the future. I wasn't shy about reusing some of the assets as I did this series. If you followed along, you probably noticed that I used hands repeatedly here and there. Not only hands, I also used some of the materials over and over again. Definitely the cyclorama background with the lighting setup I used fairly consistently throughout. And sometimes that's good. Like, particularly if there are assets you've created yourself, I don't think there's anything wrong with reusing them. But like I mentioned, building out a little library of assets for yourself can save a lot of time, and that gives you more time to focus on the creative part of things. Like modeling can be time consuming, but if you can just if you have assets in place that allow you to get your ideas down quicker, spend more time coming up with new stuff and less time repeating the mundane processes of previous projects. I think that's always a huge benefit. So we're starting to get there with the composition, honing in a little bit. It's coming together. It's starting to come together. Take a little screenshot. Love that Froggy. Love that Froggy guy. And speaking of love, I guess 100 episodes in, maybe it's a good time to really extend a huge and overwhelming thank you to everyone who's been tuning in to these episodes. Even if you've only watched one or two, do I really appreciate you guys tuning in. It's been a crazy journey over the last, over 2 years practically of putting these episodes out. The show has changed formats a couple times as my schedule has changed, and based on what certain time constraints I have in my schedule, or as new career opportunities arise. But I'm happy that I've been sticking with it, and I've built a really, really awesome audience, and I appreciate you guys so much. It's amazing to share my work with people and hear positive feedback and hear how some folks have started their own practice, their own routine creative experiments and output, and that's a really, really awesome positive thing. I'd say that it's been really useful for me, especially as my schedule gets busy and new career opportunities arise. It's been really important for me to create some guidelines for myself, let's say, to give myself this project of a video and an illustration or animation every week. It's really easy to skip a week here and there, and I've wanted to several times, to be honest, but I haven't, and I think that's helped me grow a lot. It's really fun to do this stuff, and a skill set that's worth building is going to take time and practice and diligence, if you'll excuse the pun. So this has been a great exercise, and I'm super, super thankful that I've been able to keep it up, and that I've got folks on the other end who enjoy watching it. We're over 6,000 subscribers on the channel now. Got over 250,000 views. And while I know that what I'm working on here is fairly niche, not everyone is going to be super into Cinema 4D or 3D art or computer graphics or anything like that. But that's okay. I'm not doing this to become a YouTube celebrity. I'm doing this to keep myself honest, to diligently and consistently practice and apply my skills and grow. And, even though selfishly this show is for me, I'm really glad that there's some folks who like it, who view it, who come back week after week and, stop by, say what's up. Please, in the comments below, if you're watching this and if you've been with me for a while, let me know what you found useful throughout all these 100 episodes. Is there a favorite of yours? Is there one you learned the most from or turned you on to a new line of thinking? I'm wondering, I'm sort of thinking aloud right now, but gosh, I have learned a ton throughout the years doing these, and sometimes I even learn from you guys. I've definitely gotten emails and comments with little tips and tricks that I've added to my workflow. So I always appreciate that feedback. And then I guess, the other thing you could comment on is what kind of stuff you'd like to see moving forward. I've gotten a lot of this fantasy character illustration sort of out of my system, so I probably won't be working on that anytime soon. I definitely want to go back to doing some landscapes. That's some of my favorite stuff, especially the really abstract geometric landscapes. Super, super fun to put together, and something I definitely want to return to. I think I might also spend some time doing maybe a little more hard surface modeling and just doing random objects here and there, maybe continuing to build out the library of assets that I've created. But what would you guys like to see? You can see here we've added a simple little background with a series of pyramids, little abstract hills, let's call them. Speaking of geometric landscapes, sort of added one to the background here quite simply. We're getting close to starting to crank some final renderings out here. One of the things I wind up playing with a bit later is something I don't play with a ton, which is adding depth of field. I figured since it was such a busy scene, and I did want a little bit of background interest, I needed to keep the background simple and, subtle. So, of course, I'm doing a tone-on-tone treatment that's all the same color in the background, which is great. It gives us just a little bit of variation, but not a ton, and a consistent color helps with that, obviously. But another thing I wanted to do is to sort of shift the background further back and really keep it soft and subtle, was to add a little bit of a depth blur. So you can see, actually, I was just adding it to the camera there. And that's one of the things that made these final renderings take so long, is all the subsurface scattering, the super high poly counts, and then the blur as a post effect adds a bit to that, of course. So there you have it. Getting closer. You can see the scene was so heavy at several times I had to turn the level of detail way down. Here it's all the way on low. The characters look pretty terrible with the level of detail this low. And here what we're doing is starting to look at secondary camera angles for additional renderings. I figured since we've got such a cool scene, and since it is episode 100, that maybe I'll do a couple extra renderings towards the end here, really build out the library, have something extra special to share. I think it was an improvement to get that owl down, flying over that word episodes. The composition wasn't quite working with the two characters positioned up there on the zeros. But breaking the difference and having one up there and one sort of halfway down, I think, helped us along a little bit. Here I'm patiently waiting as this rendering cranks out. Because it's tough, you can't see exactly where the motion blur falls necessarily, because it is a post process in the rendering effect. So the whole scene will render, and then the blur will add itself in after the fact. Now I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think what I could have done to make that a little faster was go to the physical renderer inside of Cinema 4D instead of using the standard renderer, which is something I haven't been doing a lot lately, to be honest. I've been keeping the rendering setups like fairly simple, the render settings I think fairly simple. Really been focusing on the characters and the quality of the models themselves lately. Something to keep in mind for sure is using that physical renderer. There's the beach ball of death again there. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there thinking, don't crash, don't crash, don't crash. Brutal. Here I turned, you can see the bucket size is pretty large, these little squares rendering around. As I was looking to get the depth blur dialed in, I went ahead and made the rendering output a little bit smaller just to help that process along. It wasn't visible at all. And what wound up being the problem, I actually wasted a bunch of time here, what wound up being the problem is I had to go into my render settings. Just because I put it on my camera doesn't mean that I had motion blur set up. So what I needed to do, and I think I eventually figured this out, is I need to go into, there it is, my rendering settings, turn on depth of field. Here I'm all looking through in the wrong places. I'll figure it out eventually. This is the process, though. This is the practice. I swear, these shows are not pre-rehearsed or pre-recorded, and sometimes I have trouble figuring things out, and gotta just sort of be patient and keep after it, and eventually I figure things out. That's, I guess, one thing I guess I'll comment on is a lot of times I get the comments from people that say, "Oh, it's too fast. You have to explain everything. Why is it time lapse?" I don't view these as strict tutorials. There's a lot of tutorial. Like if you want to learn a very specific single skill or feature in Cinema 4D or any other graphics application for that matter, you can just go into YouTube or into the Google and just type in what you want, and you'll find very descriptive, very straightforward tutorials that will tell you which buttons do what and how best to do certain things. But that's not necessarily what this show is about. Like, of course, I think people are going to take something from these episodes, and they're going to be learning, I hope. But it's not. These aren't intended to be strict tutorials, right? I'm not going to say here's exactly how you make a model of a shiny red ball, some clones of a shiny red ball in cinema. There's plenty of stuff out there like that. I really want to do is I want this to be me sharing my creative process, really, in that simple a way. I want it to be something that selfishly keeps me motivated to continue making good stuff and building my skill set and sharing that process with you guys. So this is about healthy creative habits. This is about expanding our visual vocabulary and getting better and staying consistent and keeping the output up. All these really important things to be able to do as you're forging an art career for yourself or a creative career for yourself. Really, or any career for that matter. Like if you want to learn something that's worthwhile, it's going to take a long time. This this show could very well be about practicing scales on the piano, right? Whatever it is that you do, I would encourage you to do it consistently, give yourself routines, and build healthy habits. Same could be said for physical fitness, right? Set a schedule for yourself and don't break it. And getting in great shape is desirable because it's not easy to do, and it takes consistent effort and practice and dedication. And that's what this show is about. It's a show for me first, to keep me on the path, and it's for you guys too, but not because I'm going to show you which buttons you press exactly to make a specific thing. But I think there is value in watching the way others work. Even if they're not explaining every little step they take, you can sort of get a view into their head or their creative thought process. And I would say that illustration and drawing more specifically, but any visual output, it really is about your thought process made visual. So there you have it. So that's what this show is about. Sharing that, warts and all, and letting people see that this stuff doesn't just happen overnight. This is really it's a lifetime process. It's a path that you stay on. And my skills, I don't know if my skills will ever get to the place where I really want them. I'm not sure if I'll ever be satisfied with my abilities as an artist or as a professional illustrator. So that's good. That's what keeps me going. That's what gets me out of bed and creating every day. So I think we've got most of our materials and most of our assets the way we want them. Got the camera set up good. I think I finally figured out that depth of field. I'm doing one last test or so, but I think in any moment here, we're going to really kick off that final set of renderings. And those are going to be in extra high speed because no one wants to watch that. There it goes. Super high rendering. 4K. Let's do this thing. I will say, on the tail of my little diatribe about how everyone should stay consistent and motivated and keep after it, I am going to give myself a little bit of a break after this episode 100. I haven't missed a week in over a year. And even though the show has changed formats, it used to be a live show, and now I've got more of a full-time job going on, so I can't do it. I can't dedicate 2 hours every Tuesday to doing this. I do have to get into the office and work on other stuff, but it still allowed me to stay consistent. I still want, I'm still going to be making something every week, and it just happens to be a pre-recorded episode now instead of that live stream, and that was super fun. But, over the years, the show's evolved and changed a little bit, but I haven't taken a break in a really, really long time. The point I'm trying to make is, and for the next couple of weeks, I am going to disappear. I'm sad to say it, but I think I'm going to take a couple weeks off. And the reason I'm doing that actually is my wife and I have this really amazing vacation planned, and we're going to be totally off the radar for 2 weeks. So I'm not bringing my laptop with me on the vacation. And I think that's really good. So maybe that's the flip side of that coin is, while I think it's important to stay consistent and challenge yourself and really, come back to the drawing board every week or every day and keep up those positive habits that I mentioned. The other thing is, it's okay to give yourself a break here and there. People can burn out, and it's important for creatives to take a rest sometime and not overdo it, and allow themselves to take a breather and appreciate how far they've come, and just take a little break. So I'm going to be in Europe for 2 weeks with my wife, and we're going to have a really great time, and it's going to be a chance for us to recharge the batteries and get away from work and get away from the routine that we're so used to. So apologies there, but bear with me. I'll be back in a couple weeks. Pick up episode 101. And what I'm really hoping is that you guys listen to this and can start supplying me with a whole bunch of ideas as to what we can start working on when we get back. I don't know, what do you think? Should it be a series of things? Should it be maybe there's another set of things we can make, like just as the last 15 or so episodes have been revolving around this idea of fantasy characters, particularly anthropomorphic fantasy characters that are these frogs and pigs and giants and owls and things like that. What do you think? Maybe a series of spaceships? I don't know. I'm just making stuff up here. Maybe it's a series of landscapes in a similar style. Maybe we take a few episodes and just work on one landscape where we really go full bore and add tons and tons of details and make one of those giant isometric maps like we've done in the past. That's actually sort of appealing. Those isometric maps are really, really fun. So maybe I'll dig into those. But I want to hear from you guys. The comments have been a little bit slower as of late. Perhaps that's because I haven't had the time to do a voiceover the last several months. The practice has been without audio. That is something I want to try and do more of, because I think you're able to learn a little bit more about my thought process when I do add the audio. So thanks for bearing with me on that. I do intend to get back to that as my schedule allows. It probably won't be every single week, but hopefully I can build it in more frequently. Is that something you guys would like to see? And perhaps that's the reason that the commenting has been a little bit low as of late. I do really want to hear from you guys. One of the saddest things about moving away from a live format, which I did, about 9 months ago when I got this new job offer, we had built a nice little community. It was, it was the same handful of names in the chat every week, and that was really great. I do kind of miss that. I hope some of the people who used to watch the live streams still stick around and watch the pre-recorded ones. If that's the case, give a shout in the comments below. I really, like I was saying, I want to hear from you guys, and I miss the in the moment live interaction. So maybe I can find time for a live streamed episode here and there. But one of the important things I think is allowing myself the flexibility to change the practice and to allow it to grow and evolve and shift as the months and years go by. People's lives change, and they don't always have the ability to keep everything consistent and the same as it was. I think as long as the effort is there and the output continues, that the format can change a little bit. So who knows what this might look like in another year or two. But I hope I'll still be doing it. I intend to still be doing it. Here we're closing in on the last rendering. You can see what I'm doing is using adjustment layers in Photoshop to do my retouching, my color correcting. And that makes it really easy to apply the same exact settings in each of these files. What I'm really doing is just dragging those adjustment layers from one file to the next, which is super easy and super convenient. Always work in non-destructive methods if possible. By non-destructive, I mean don't apply the levels directly to a layer of pixels. Make them a separate readjustable layer that you can drag into other files or tweak slightly or reduce the opacity on. It really just allows for much more flexibility and allows you to make changes a lot easier down the line. Man, so as we're approaching the final few minutes of this exercise, I wanted to thank you guys again. It's been 100 episodes. It's amazing. It's almost 2 years worth of weekly episodes. We've learned a ton. I've grown my audience, and I think garnered a little extra attention for myself. This has been a great promotional thing for me. I've gotten my name out there a little bit more. I've created a whole library of artwork that I'm really proud of, to be honest. Not every piece is a big winner, and some weeks are going to produce duds, and that's okay. That's all part of the process. I think if you are to get to those masterpieces, it's important that you get the crappy ones out of your system first, right? That's part of the process. So it's awesome that you guys have helped me grow in that way and have been around to watch me make the good ones and the bad. And it's incredible. I can't believe I've got 6,000 followers, and I have each and every one of you to thank. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe. Hit the little bell icon for notifications and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think about it. Share it with a friend if you think they might find it useful. And please say hi and give me a look into what you're creating. If you use this video or any video to help you create something new, I would love to see it. So please share, and thank you so much for getting us to 100 episodes. It's really an honor and a blessing, and I'm super thankful for each and every one of you. And I'll be back in a few weeks to continue the march towards excellence and making lots more really fun, awesome stuff in Cinema 4D. So this is Stuart saying goodbye. See you soon. Thanks.